Welcome to Pontification Nation. I'm your host, Ricky Skittle, coming to you live, as always, from my mother's basement. We got a great show lined up for you today. I'm going to discuss North Korea, what happened this week, and talk a little bit about China and how that relates to North Korea. And then, of course, I have to talk a little bit about AOC and some things that she's saying because, she continues to talk. And when she opens her mouth, things that are not smart come out of it because she is not a smart or serious person. So when she gets away from her handlers and starts, speaking out of her brain or what is in there, I don't know if I would call it a brain, but, when she starts speaking, she says things that, are absolutely ridiculous. And so we have to continue to let people understand the truth about what it is that she's saying because she's not telling the truth. Or she's severely misinformed, or she's lying. One of them, something. But in any case, on to China and North Korea and Trump. So we're trying to do this trade deal with China, right? China abuses the whole world on trade. I mean, it's something that everybody knows, but because of the globalist control over the people and levers of power in this world, they continue to allow it to happen because at the end of the day, what they want is a total destruction of the world and communism globally, worldwide, and they'd be willing to use China to do that. So when we look at what's going on with North Korea and China, you have to look at North Korea. North Korea is a hostage rescue mission that Donald Trump is on. And he is doing hostage negotiations with President Xi and with Chairman Kim. I mean, it's as simple as that. The state of North Korea, the People's Republic of North Korea, Democratic People's Republic, DPRK, right? So the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea has been under Chinese control, and they have allowed the Kims to have control of this nation. And China uses North Korea. I would call it a proxy state. So China has two masks. They have a panda mask and a dragon mask. They use the panda mask on the world stage through propaganda. They use the panda mask at home through propaganda. The panda mask is propaganda. The dragon mask is reality. But they never wear the dragon mask. North Korea wears the dragon mask. So when China wants to be disruptive, they will then get North Korea to be disruptive, and then China comes in and they calm them down and they make everybody in the world think that they're on their side, and it's all basically a big illusion. Essentially, North Korea is a proxy state of China and does its bidding, and those people there need to be freed, and Trump recognizes this, but he also understands that it's a very challenging dynamic because he can't let on how much he actually recognizes lest they start to take back more control over Chairman Kim. Now, Trump is working with Kim to let him be assured that he is going to allow Kim to maintain his country as long as he starts treating his people right and giving them economic opportunity and some freedom. I don't think that North Korea will ever look at it and say it's a free country. I don't think it's going to be a democracy because Kim would lose control probably in a democracy. So it will maintain some sort of, hopefully like Vietnam would be the ideal, roadmap for North Korea and what Vietnam looks like today as opposed to what they look like, in the 80s, 90s, 70s, and 60s. So that's kind of the dynamic there. And understanding that dynamic is how you understand what Trump's doing. You notice how Trump's always in a rush to do everything. Build a wall, he declares a national emergency. He wants to just get stuff done. But this, what do you say? I'm fine. I can wait. I'll wait for the right deal. He's being very, very strategically patient. So they're in these negotiations with China. Trump is lopping down praise all over the negotiations. He's telling everyone in the world how great the negotiations are going, so much so that he is going to delay the tariff implementation on March 1st. So this was a strategy to find out how much control China still exerts over Chairman Kim, because it's a hostage rescue situation. He has to negotiate the release of the hostage, which is Chairman Kim. Chairman Kim may or may not know that he's a hostage, but he's getting his first tastes of freedom. And I think he's starting to like it, but he also has to deal with the fact that he is in debt to China and Chairman Xi is using that leverage and influence over him. So this is a very long battle that's going to continue. And if you look back at China, I mean, these dictatorships, because they know that it's a maximum of 8 years that a president can be president in the United States. If they have a president that they don't like or they aren't really willing to work with, they have no problem waiting him out, because they know in 8 years they're still going to be leader of their country, and they can take advantage of the next president if this president is like a Donald Trump and they don't want to, they are afraid to deal with him because they don't want to lose all the control that they have worked over the past 3 decades to create. So that's kind of the story behind Kim and China. And really anything that you look at when you look at North Korea it is a negotiation with China and not North Korea. Because North Korea won't give up the nukes if China doesn't allow them to. So President Trump is happy to keep economic pressure on China, as well as keep negotiating with China, and then let the Kim thing be until President Trump has enough belief that Kim is no longer controlled by China. Now, something happened in the meetings, because the first day they talked and it sounded great. Something happened in those negotiations that made Trump very clear that China was still exerting influence, and he needed to continue to work on the hostage release negotiation part of his strategy, because his hostage is not released yet, or China's hostage is not released yet. So he can't, in good faith, negotiate with Kim until he knows that China has no more influence over Kim. So this is an operation to free Chairman Kim from Chinese control. And if you want to understand anything about Chinese control, you need to look no further than the Belt and Road Initiative. So back in the day, there was something called the Silk Road, where all the silk came out of China, and they dominated that global trade position. So the Belt and Road Initiative is a $1 trillion infrastructure project which is going on globally, mostly in Asia and Africa, some in Europe, and a little bit now starting to show itself in South America. And what China's doing, we were talking about shithole countries, and as I was preparing for this video, I realized if you start looking around, if you go and look at a shithole country, the one thing that they all have in common is their relationship to China. So if you want to end shithole countries in this world, you should probably end China's global domination, because everywhere they are, a country turns into a shithole. And that is by design, because what they do is they bribe the officials, they take some control over natural resources in the country, then they start lending money to the people who they bribe, but they're doing it for the country. And then the people who they bribe are taking that money that is borrowed from China and using it for their own good. And then those people, eventually the resources will start to get depleted, and those people will not be able to pay. And then China will essentially foreclose on the country, and it will become another proxy state of China, because China wants to dominate the globe. And that's their ideal. They want to dominate thought, leadership, everything. If you think what they want to do in China, they don't want to implement on a global scale, I've got an island just off the coast of New York I'll sell you for, $25,000. So in any case, so you look at this Belt and Road. So I started, kind of looking at the Belt and Road so that I could make sure that I could explain it the way I wanted to. So essentially what it is they are building sea routes and roads and bridges and pipeline infrastructure all over Asia, and they're indebting the countries to them to build up this infrastructure that they're using to deplete those countries of their natural resources. And eventually they will end up foreclosing on these states that they're entering into agreements with, in my opinion. That's the goal. And then they'll have, domination and control of all the continents of the world. And then they'll start with, their thought police and their surveillance. And then, They also are entering into arms agreements with these people so that they can keep their own people under control. So I came across this interesting case. So Patrick Ho U.S. bribery case, CEFC China Energy identified in evidence against ex-Hong Kong minister. So this guy was a minister, he was in politics in China, and he ends up leaving China, and he has this think tank in the U.S., and he is now, when you look at this, there's actually a couple of posts in here, but he is also under investigation for arms dealing by U.S. prosecutors as well. This guy's in jail in New York, and he's being prosecuted by the SDNY. Now, if you remember sometime, and I can't remember when, and this is the part that I don't know, but there was a big court case in D.C., and it was a grand jury case, and everybody was saying that it was from Mueller because they think that it was a company from Russia, but nobody knows what the case is. It actually went up to the Supreme Court, and it had to do with sovereignty of a nation and its ability to be prosecuted by the U.S. And so no one knows about this case, but I'm starting to think that they are trying to, because he worked for an oil conglomerate that's owned by a Chinese state company, and I'm thinking that maybe that grand jury indictment and that battle that was going on in court that nobody knows about might have had something to do with this, because I think the timing is all the same when you look at it. But in any case, this guy is charged with bribing people in Chad, Uganda, places that are on the list of places that they recommend Americans don't go because they're shithole countries. And no offense to the people of those countries, but this is all China's influence, and it's not about the people of the country. It's about the people who are in power and what they're doing to the people of their country. This is not about these individual people. This is about China and its control over the globe and what it wants to do. So look at the Belt and Road Initiative. Chairman Xi, the 5-year anniversary was just in December of 2018. So there's a lot of articles on it, to kind of look at it. But it essentially is a large infrastructure project meant to take control of the economic, trade, and political operations of many countries around the globe. And lots of countries are signing on to this because China's giving them quote unquote free money for their things and their dictators and all of that. But in the end, China's probably going to end up foreclosing when they can't repay their debts because of hyperinflation and, all these things that are going on in their country. So then China will foreclose on them, and they will become, another proxy state of China behind the scenes that can then cause turmoil around the globe, just like Kim Jong-un. So, that's what's going on there, and that is kind of my basic gist. We're going to talk about this a lot more in detail as time goes on, but just for the, to kind of wet your whistle and get you a little bit aware of this, all of this North Korea stuff has to do with China, and none of the North Korea stuff will be resolved until the China stuff is resolved. The reason that Trump withheld the tariffs was because he wanted to see for himself how much control China still exerted over control and influence over North Korea. And apparently it was too much for Trump to be palatable for a deal, because he knows that if China controls North Korea, the deal is not going to be proper or right, because China doesn't make deals that are proper or right. That's why this is taking so long in China, because it's not about buying extra stuff from our farmers. It's about the theft of American information, technology, the weird arrangements that American companies have to go through to do business in China. And, all that stuff is way more valuable than a few $100 billion trade deficit. But if you think about trade deficit and a few $100 billion, that is the U.S. GDP going to China GDP. And I'm going to do something a little bit more in depth, because I look back to figure out where all this stuff started happening. And it all started happening around 2000, when China got extremely powerful and their GDP started blowing up. So we're having 2% GDP growth. They're having 7% GDP growth. But if it weren't for our disastrous trade deals, we probably would have had more like 4 to 5% GDP growth. But China just happened to extract a lot of our GDP from us, which is part of their long plan, because they play the long game better than we do, because we change our representatives more often than they do. Now, I mentioned this in my other video about the vote where AOC had to go change her vote a bunch of times. They pulled all these people into a room. They're threatening them with primarying them. All this shady stuff going on, and AOC is at the center of it. And so I saw this tweet today. It said, if you're mad that I think people should know when Dems vote to expand ICE powers, then be mad. ICE is a dangerous agency with zero accountability, widespread reporting of rape, abuse of power, and children dying in DHS custody. Having a D next to your name doesn't make that right. So basically, she's going to be primarying progressives against these moderate Democrats who are from purple districts. And, I actually live in one of these districts that has a moderate Democrat that just won. And I've been impressed that so far that person has followed through with what they said they were going to do in the campaign in regards to a lot of the stuff that they're voting on. So, I'm pleased with that. But at the same time, I look at this and I'm like, man, is ICE really have this widespread reporting of rape and all this stuff? I mean, what's the information on that? Where does that come from? Because I don't really see that in the news that I review because, it's probably biased. So I wanted to expand my thinking and expand my knowledge on something that she's talking about. So I did. So I went to, my really, really favorite spot for as objective as I can get progressive liberal reporting, which is The Intercept. And I like Glenn Greenwald. I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, but I like him as a person, that the interactions I've seen him have. He goes on Tucker sometimes. And I like him as a person. I believe in general he's genuinely honest, because a lot of the stuff that he reports on doesn't necessarily support his views, but he still reports on it anyway. So I kind of judge him as maybe I don't know if it's unbiased arbiter, but if you're looking for non-propaganda, I don't believe that this stuff is propaganda, but the way it's written is a little interesting. So let's talk about it. So we have from The Intercept, it says detained then violated. Sounds very, very bad. 1,224 complaints reveal a staggering pattern of sexual abuse in immigration detention. Half of those accused worked for ICE. And that sounds bad. I was like, wow, 1,224 complaints. That's a lot of complaints for, an immigration center. So then I started looking at the actual, numbers. So the 1,227 is over a period of 7 or 8 years. And then I started thinking, well, what are the percentages of these? So I started looking at the percentage. So these are the amount of people that were in custody, and these are the amount of allegations. So this comes out, generally the math comes out to be anywhere between 0.004 to 0.007%. So it's like about 0.5% annually of people that are under the responsibility of ICE and DHS that report an allegation of some sort of sexual harassment or assault. Which is, I don't know what the total number is when you look at a whole population, like how many sexual harassment or assault claims there are in the United States. I didn't do that research, but 0.5%, while probably unnecessary, it might be representative of the population. You also have to understand that a lot of the population, because when I looked at this, I said, wow, I can't believe that ICE agents are, doing this many assaults on the people that they're responsible for. That seems like a big problem. So you come down and look at the allegations by subject type. Most of these allegations are coming from detainees and contractors. So this to me looks like it is, I think what this says is that these are the detainees that are maybe sexually assaulting other detainees, and that's the way it looks to me. I don't know. You can judge for yourself what this means, allegations by subject type. It's not very clear, but, they're ICE staff, it's 2 and 4. Now, I don't know if this means that ICE staff are alleged 2 times and 4 times to have sexually assaulted an inmate, or if this means that maybe ICE staff got assaulted by another ICE staff. I don't know what that means. But to me, the way this looks is most of these that are happening, over 2/3, are happening from the detainee population. And these are criminals that are in these detention facilities, a lot of them. So, it can, to me, be, I think, maybe not that big of a percentage-wise of the population number, 0.5%. I don't know what the normal percentage of the population that has allegations of sexual assault. A lot of this stuff is, done in private, so you don't know about settlements and allegations. But so let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, we know that this is not the best statistical analysis, and I can't be exactly sure of a number of other variables. But just for the sake of the discussion, so these are allegations. So the allegations by subject type are about 0.5% of the population. When you go and look at the findings, the substantiated findings bring this down to like a number that is very, very, very negligible. It's 0.007%. So it's 7/100ths of a penny are the amount of substantiated allegations in the investigations. Now, one could argue that these are tainted investigations and they don't want to put out the real numbers, and that may well be a good argument. I don't know the answer to that, but just for the sake of this conversation, with these numbers, it's almost like it's non-existent that this happens at these facilities, and I would almost say I'd pride them on their ability to detain 40,000 people and prevent sexual assaults from happening at a higher rate, because we do have some public information about people and sexual harassment and allegations like this. So these are the actual settlements. So we can assume that these are truly founded pieces of information, on an annual basis, of people in Congress who harass or assault people who work for them. So in these cases, it's an average of about 13, just under 13. It's like 12.6 a year of the number of settlements for the data that we have on this chart. So I wanted to figure out, how many members of Congress there were. Right now, there's 540 members. And just to err on the side of caution, I used 540 members for all of these years when we know that our population has grown, and there were probably less members of Congress in 97 than there are in 2017. But because I don't want to go through and get the number of Congress people in every single one of these, because I'm really just making a point here, I went with the 540 number, knowing that it'd probably skew my results to be less beneficial to me. So it comes out that it's about 2% of the population of people in Congress that are having settlements. So these are founded, these are adjudicated, if you will, allegations of sexual harassment and assault. So if there is, if we look at the findings, so you have like a 7/100ths of 1% chance of being assaulted sexually in a ICE, to be found, to be adjudicated to be assaulted sexually in an ICE facility. And if you go to work at Congress, the chance of you getting assaulted is like 400 times that amount. It might even be 4,000 times that amount. 7/100ths of 1% is small, and 2% is big. So we're talking about, like, you are so much more likely to be sexually harassed or assaulted if you work in Congress than if you are in an ICE facility. Okay, AOC? So spare me your propaganda about this. This is ridiculous. Congress are the true sexual predators, and for a bunch of people who are criminals, and probably a lot of MS-13 people, to have a rate of like 0.5% of allegations and 7/100ths of 1% of findings, I think that's pretty good job on ICE's part, considering the population of the people they're dealing with. These people in Congress are supposed to be good people. They're supposed to be representatives of the United States, and this is what we get from them. Okay? We get a 2.5% rate of sexual harassment and assault settlements on an annual basis, on average. Now, obviously, 25 in 2007 was a lot higher. That was like 4.5%. The highest was like 4.5 to 5%. The lowest, I think, was 6 at like about 1%. But this is insane. You're much more likely to be harassed or sexually assaulted if you work in Congress than you are if you're detained in an ICE facility. So spare me the 1224, because they say 1,224 records of sexual assault, but they don't tell you that's over 700 years. Or 7 years, not 700. That's over 7 years. It's like 200 a year. Considering the population of people with gang members and drug dealers and all the other people that ICE take in, and the vulnerable people of women with children who are commingled and housed in similar facilities and same facilities, I think that's a pretty good job. Is it perfect? No. Can we be better? Yes, we can always be better. And you know that. That's what this show's about, being better. But we can be better about the way that we talk about this stuff, because it's just the way that it's written is written to make it look like it's a much larger problem than it is, because on a percentage basis, the problem is very tiny. And when you factor in all the other factors, of who the people are that are detained and who the people are that serve Congress and what the expectations of how they act are, there is a widespread sexual harassment, sexual assault problem in Congress. There is not a widespread sexual harassment, sexual assault problem in ICE. It's systemic in Congress. It's happening every year, all the time. And these are only the ones that we kind of know about. How much other stuff goes on that we don't know about? So, in summary, North Korea is not really about North Korea. It's Operation Free Chairman Kim and his people from Chinese totalitarianism. The Chinese trade negotiations are a barometer of how we will be able to operate and free Kim Jong-un from his people. Do you think, we have 20, 40,000 troops in South Korea. Do you think that Chairman Xi wants North and South Korea to be reunited and then have the ability of Americans to have troops on the border of China? No, he doesn't. That's what this is about. This is about Trump wanting to put the panda mask on and kill the dragon. And let's be the people that we say we are, in public and in private. When no one else is looking, what do you do? For Pontification Nation, this is Ricky Skittle, and I'm out.